Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to another third channel finance video. Did you know that to be wealthy, you don't need to be sat in a room filled with a bunch of money? In fact, if you have a bunch of cash flying around your room, that's actually probably not a very good indicator for being wealthy for very long in life. And in fact, I think a lot of people have very skewed views about not only how much money kind of is in some ways, but also what it means to be rich, what it means to be a top 10% earner. And today I wanted to smash through all of that and to show you I'll just skip any clickbait or burying the lead. Let's just show you the graph, the post-tax income percentiles for the UK. I have a graph for the United States we'll be talking about, but this is mostly focused on the UK. I think the wider lesson though is that people would grossly underestimate what it means to be rich, because in case you don't know, so this is after you've paid your tax, which is the one obligation you literally cannot avoid. It is a legal requirement to pay tax, I bet you're aware of. The bottom 1% of people earn just under £8,000 after tax, whereas the top 1% of people earn just over £100,000 after tax. Again, before tax, it's something like £170,000. But like, this is a graph of how much people have after they have paid their tax, and you might assume that to be the wealthiest, to be in the wealthiest half of the country, you might have a number that is really, really high, right? To be statistically wealthy, to earn more than every other person, you assume you'd have to be crazy high on this graph, but you only need to earn £20,000 after paying tax. Before tax, it's something like $33,000, the average salary, but it's about £20,000 after tax if you lined up every person in the country by their income from least to highest. The middle person would only earn about £20,000, which means if you earn more than that, you are in the top 50% of the United Kingdom. To go even crazier on this one, if we look at so this is the first percentile, the second percentile, third, fourth, fifth. To be in the top 5% of the UK, you only need to have a salary which gives you, what is this right here, 52,000-ish pounds post-tax, 53,000 let's say. If you earn more than £53,000 after you paid your tax, you are in the top 5% of the United Kingdom. Then take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you can realize that if you earn £41,000 after tax, you're in the richest 10%. Do you assume that this is probably not what you assume, that if someone earns £41,000, £3,500 a month after tax, that they are one of the wealthiest 10% of the UK. They're wealthier than they earn more than 9 out of every 10 people they meet. You probably don't assume that because, again, people have very skewed views about what income people have to earn, partly because, I mean, like, it varies by country. The United States, for instance, has a much more sharp curve than the UK does. It's not by as much as people will tell you in the media, but like it's got a much, I'd actually argue it's a more gradual curve, but it's one that like consistently goes up, so we could talk about the differences between countries there. But the reason that people won't say that you're one of the wealthiest people in the UK, even if you are earning 41,000 and therefore earn more than 9 out of every 10 people, is because of this graph, which shows the amount of money that a household is worth in the UK. Again, bottom 1% having literally negative, it looks like, when you total all of their things together, whereas the top 1% have about £3 million of just money lying around. Here's the deal, right? The biggest mistake that people make is conflating income for wealth. And this is a mistake that's not only it's not only a mistake that means that you wouldn't understand that, yeah, you're not actually one of the wealthiest 10% if you earn £41,000, because at £41,000, if you save all of that money, it would take your lifetime to be the top 1%, and to be the top 10%, it would take 25 years of saving all of that money in your salary, not paying for food, not paying for rent, paying your legal tax obligations, and then nothing else. 25 years later, you'll be one of the wealthiest 10% of the UK. But a lot of this is because people have to, again, like, the reason it takes 25 years to do that is because people have been saving for generations, for hundreds of years in some cases, to have these very wealthy estates. Not in most cases, but in some cases. And so, again, some of it is the fact that, like, yeah, if you look at this is the average for the top 1%, the £102,000 after tax. Some people will earn £1 million a year after tax and be in this top 1% after 3 years, but that's not the majority of people. Income needs to correlate into, obviously into wealth, and the way that works, using my handy-dandy MS Paint graphs, is if this is the income of someone earning £100,000 a year, and this is the income of someone earning £50,000 a year, it's meant to be half the size. There we go. That's about half. And if you are someone who you earn £100,000 a year, but you spend 80,000 of it on your house, that's a really bad investment. Let's say house and car, and then you spend £2,000 every year on £20,000 on food. then you, oh, like, let's say 18,000, and then you save 2,000. We'll use yellow because, no, wait. Yeah, we'll use yellow to represent how much you save. You save £2,000 a year, and it takes you 1,000 years to become the top 1%. However, if you earn £50,000 a year, and you have a very frugal car, a very frugal apartment that costs you just 18,000 a year, is that 18,000? It seems like it. And you know what? You spend a much more reasonable figure of like, I don't know, £2,000 a year on food, and then you save the other 30,000, then it will take you 100 years. Yeah, this is a different colored yellow. This is a good graph. Then it will just take you 100 years of earning this 30,000. I'm gonna have to label this graph, aren't I? 30k in savings versus 2k in a year in savings means that you will be saving 15 times faster, which means in very little time at all, you will be higher up on this graph despite being lower on this graph. Income is the money you are earning for doing things today. Wealth is the money you earn for doing things yesterday, and realistically not yesterday because that's in the last tax year, but doing things a long time ago. And so how is it that 1% of people have almost £3 million in wealth? How is it that the top 10% even have almost £1 million? How is it that 10% of this country are millionaires? That seems absurd. I don't know a single millionaire. I don't think I know a single millionaire. And I know way more than 10 people. And ignoring that people of similar wealth grouped together, ignoring the age factors, let's talk about where that wealth actually is. Because when you picture someone with £3 million, you picture someone with a savings account that says you have £2,881,900 lying around. No, what it really looks like, by the way, we could talk about wealth and some great graphs later. What it really looks like is most people have their wealth in, the vast majority of wealth is in two things. It's not in physical things. Again, me and my money room is actually this is a bad use of money. The 4-poster bed, that really expensive looking chair. Actually, it's not. It's a pretty cheap looking chair. This is a pretty cheap looking apartment, actually. But like, this is not good use of money. This is a bad way to store your money. Physical things and financial and physical wealth are the worst forms. Having money in direct cash is a very bad idea. It will be eaten up by inflation. Having things in physical stuff, bad idea. It will be eaten up by rodents or thieves or whatever. I don't know. But like, these are not the things that people save money in. They put their money in their pension, one of the best forms of legal tax evasion that exists, and property, one of the best forms of you live somewhere, but also somehow living somewhere makes you money, and it's all tax, again, like that. Basically, there are big incentives to make sure that there is a lot of free money being left on the table if you don't invest in your future, both in terms of having a way to pay for yourself when you're old, which is a pension, but realistically is like a savings account that only works after you stop working. After you stop having any income whatsoever, you can still have some if you have a pension, and if you have a property, then you also don't have to have the biggest expense ever. That is a easy way to be wealthy. Put money in this, and now you can be rich. In fact, a lot of people have a big misconception about money and wealth and stuff, because these graphs are depressing. The bottom 1% of households have so little, it doesn't show up on a graph. Even the bottom 20% of households, who I'd guess would be most of the people I've interacted with in my life, it's like, yeah, that is, what is it, like 30, 40,000 pounds in wealth over a lifetime, and people in the top 1% have saved 100 times that. But one of the great things about the UK that isn't true, I think it's true in most major economies. There's a few weird examples where it's not. But if you look, like, wealth as a whole, the pie is getting bigger. This pie used to, wait, let me show you my high quality MS Paint graphs. If the pie used to be this big, the pie is now this big. There is more pie for everyone. That is my manifesto pledge. Yeah, there we go. I like that. There is now more pie for everyone, even if all of that pie from before belonged to the 1%, which isn't how wealth can work. Now, that means that there's more pie left over for the 10%. Yeah, the 10% gets that amount. And then I don't know what I'm doing at this point. It's very bizarre. But my point is there's more cake for everyone else, or pie, or whatever the example is. So that's the thing that people don't realize, that like money, the collective size of the pie, even not measured just by inflation, but by GDP compared to the economy, is going up. We are saving, or we are putting money into property, wealth, and of things like that. But also the amount that is, again, like this, the graph. One of the things that I was shocked by, I read a lot of books. Enid Blyton was one of the authors, but I read a lot of books from authors from like the 1920s, because I read a lot from my grandparents' shelf, and I guess they got books from them because that was roughly the time. And it's shocking that, like, oh yeah, they lived in a world where it was entirely separate, right? Like things seemed so much nicer and more romantic back then. When I read these books, it's like, oh yeah, most people didn't go to private school and have like private chefs and maids. That was just a small 1% that wrote most of the media or whatever. Now it's a much smaller share of the GDP. It's still too high, some could argue, if you want a more egalitarian world. But my point is that like wealth inequality roughly flatlined in the 80s, which is a thing that you can say. Another thing that you can say, looking at this graph, is that like, yeah, actually, being in the top 20% of earners might be an impossible task for you. Like, for some people, one of these graphs is motivating, one isn't. But like, being in the top 20% of earners is impossible for a lot of people. Some people are like, yeah, learn to code and you'll get one of these, because there are some jobs that pay absurd amounts in the center of London, which is where I was for my last video. Or for a different video on a different channel. But like, being in the center of London is where there are some very high paying jobs, sure. But also that comes with very high costs. So it's even like, even if I can work out how to get one of these salaries, I have to then spend a bunch of that money. How can anyone get anywhere in this world? So sure, yeah. It's like the thing a lot of people, like especially people in my age group, are realizing is like, even if you earn a lot of money, that doesn't just immediately translate into you being wealthy. What does translate into you being wealthy is trying to retain as much of that money as possible. If you're more like this guy, then in 20 years, you'll be, again, like a thing that's really interesting is that like generational wealth gaps are kind of growing in a weird way. There's lots of, you can see right here, this perhaps the most interesting thing. They're like, oh yeah, regardless of this graph being true and not being evenly separated, as you grow older, as long as you don't get rid of all of that money the moment it comes in, you do have a lot more money. This is why if you are also in your 20s like me, you probably have a lot of people who don't have £50,000 in savings. But the fact is, as you grow older, but by just not spending all the money that exists, you'll do better. And so that is the fact that this graph translates into this graph being very different, but also the same with a slightly less sharp curve. Actually, is that the same curve? It's kind of uncanny how similar these curves are. Although actually it's got a much higher bottom. This bottoms out at like 0. This bottoms out at like 8,000 at least. And that's before all the various benefits and stuff you get. And also ignoring that you don't pay any tax down there. So it's a little bit skewed in some ways. But yeah, the big lesson on this channel, and the big lesson for any finance channel before anything else, because I like making these videos. I don't know how often I do it. But the big lesson above anything else that you can ever take from any video about how to have money is like, when you earn money, the more you can save and put into the future, the better. And the future, this is the complex bit. The future doesn't just mean having a big pile of money, doesn't just mean living in the money room. What that means, according to this, is you need to work out how to get a pension. There's usually, no matter where you live in the world, there is some tax relief for pensions, and in some cases, your employer will give you money for putting money in a pension. It's literally free money. Do that. Work out how you can have some form of property. Sure, there's a housing bubble, and all your friends who don't own houses and don't intend to will talk about that. But on an individual level, you can assume that it's probably a good idea to have at least some investment in property. You don't have to make it 40% or 80% of your net worth, but have some investment in that. Then you can buy the really nice. I don't know. I have a smart bin. That was a bad investment. That is why the physical wealth is going down. Whereas I don't know. I also own a house, and that has gone up significantly since I bought it. So having more of my money, the fact that the house cost more than the smart bin was a smart financial decision, even though it cost more. And so that's where this gets even more complex. Wealth is complex, and I feel like I could enjoy talking about it to people a lot. And that's why I made this channel where we do precisely that. And maybe you found this video to be interesting. Maybe not. Also, maybe you find it interesting just how different that is by region in the UK. Like, geographically, the wealth is concentrated in a very... In a part of the... Also, Scotland is way higher than most of the other regions. Wouldn't have guessed that. I guess Scotland has a lot of family dynasties there. But, yeah, basically, you might assume... Wow, look at that. 10% have less than £3 in total. That is nutty. Once you include debt, I'm assuming is how that works. I guess, it's interesting that they have, oh, this is 90%, that makes sense. It's interesting the stark difference. And I would say, in a society, assuming you don't make the change to the society to make it perfect, and you can't do that in your lifetime, or you can't do that fully in your lifetime, then working out how to be this and not this. Working out how to be this and not this. I'm sorry, northeast. You have nothing on the southeast, though. Let's say... It's interesting that family wealth in London is so much higher than the southeast, southwest, and the east. Wouldn't have guessed that. See? Even though that's... All the salaries are in London, but also all the expenses in the world are in London. And I can tell you that firsthand. But, yeah. I find things interesting. Maybe you find things interesting too. If you want to see more finance videos, let me know. Because it's ultimately trying to answer this same question, which is how do I be wealthy enough to tell people to go away and not need to do this because I have this. This is money you can do anything you want with. This is money you have to do something very specific for someone else for. And how do you be this and not this is the question that should be on everyone's mind. Which is why I'm a little bit of one of those fire types, but we'll talk about fire in another video. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.